Hello, citizens of planet Earth. You're at Real Turkey channel with another broadcast about Turkish politics presented by yours truly, Atilla Yeşilada. I look at my English YouTube history. I and my friends and our guests have broadcast roughly 200 videos, and to the extent we spoke politics, we always spoke of President Erdogan, who was the dominant character in Turkish politics. Please pay attention that I'm using past tense. He no longer is. The opposition is stealing the march on him, and if the polls are to be believed, they're very likely to win the next presidential and parliamentary elections. So in this video, I want to explain what's wrong with Mr. Erdogan, why has he lost his Teflon covering, who the opposition leaders are, why they are leading, and how the Erdogan era might end. Allow me to present, I always do this summary. I don't know if it goes well with our audience, but I find it useful to add visual material as much as possible. I think Mr. Erdogan is suffering from early dementia. I am not a physician, have no mental training, but if you check Google, you will see that he looks tired, he's slumping, he has lost his charisma. Essentially, he looks wooden. He may simply be overexhausted. But there may be another reason why he's becoming more erratic and unpredictable by the day. He may be afraid that he is going to lose the next presidential election, and his alliance, consisting of AKP and MHP, will turn over the majority in Turkey's parliament, Grand Assembly, to the opposition. Of course, after 20 years in power, Erdogan accumulated a lot of enemies. There are unconfirmed rumors of he and his family enriching themselves at the expense of the nation. These are rumors. But watch the Halkbank bank fraud case in the United States to see whether the prosecutors could unearth evidence of Mr. Erdogan being personally involved in money laundering and perhaps even taking bribes. So Mr. Erdogan is extremely afraid of losing. This is not just a democratic contest where rivals act gentlemanly. He knows if he loses the presidency, he's certain to be prosecuted, and his family, his cronies may spend time in prison. This is why he's running scared. Now, what kind of evidence do I have to make you watch the rest of this video? Because most of the Western observers think either Mr. Erdogan will win anyway, or that he will still postpone or reject the results of the elections. I don't pay much attention to these theories. I go by the polls and scientific evidence, and the scientific evidence shows me this. I work for Global Source Partners as a country consultant. I cover politics, and I religiously collect poll data. Here in this table, you see the average of the last 10 or 12 polls, essentially the last 3 months from August to October. Now look at the bottom column. You will see AKP is down to 32%. In the last elections, it got 47, I believe. And CELAI MHP is at 8.7%. So the two combined only garner 40% of the national vote. CHP and CHP and EIP, the other constituents of the opposition, are even in this table slightly ahead of the AKP MHP. If you add to them HDP, the pro-Kurdish party, which strategically votes with the opposition at times, and the smaller parties, which I shall introduce in a few seconds, you will see that roughly 60% of the nation is opposed to AKP and MHP. Now, this is the poll data when all undecideds or independent voters are distributed according to the raw share of the parties. Let's look at let's look at the raw data. Here, the decline in the popularity of AKP is just so blatant. It's down to 27%. Its ally MHP is at, sorry, 6.9%, which means it will fail to make it to the parliament. The last number at the very bottom right hand is the share of undecideds, 17.6%. And we have several secondary data by Metropole, who religiously analyzes the behavior of these undecideds, which shows that most of these undecideds are coming from AKP MHP, and unless Erdogan miraculously improves the economy, they are very likely to become opposition voters when the ballot comes around. So, actually, the difference between the opposition alliance and AKP slash MHP could be much bigger than indicated in this poll of polls table. Let's look at presidential polls. I'm sorry. This is by Johns Hopkins. I think they cooperate with Turkish Metropole. The president's approval rating is only 41.4%. Those who do not approve or disapprove are at 54%. And that's just damning to the Erdogan, who always attracted more of a national vote than his party. Okay, now let's introduce the opposition and how they managed to steal the march on Mr. Erdogan. This gentleman, a tree hugger, is Kemal Kilicdaroglu, the soft grandfatherly figure who leads the main center-left opposition party, CHP. He is accused of lacking charisma, not having a vision for Turkey, and not being able to control his party caucus, all of which may be true. But at this point, Erdogan doesn't have much charisma either. I started with the main opposition party, the Kılıçdaroğlu, not because it's the second largest party in the parliament, because Kılıçdaroğlu did a great service to the nation by first uniting the opposition in the 2019 municipality elections, where CHP recaptured major cities of Ankara and Istanbul. Izmir always voted for CHP. They also won other major cities such as Adana, Mersin, etc. I think, if my memory doesn't fail me, currently 60% of the Turkish population live in municipalities controlled by the opposition parties. That's how the AKP's decline started. Because in Turkey, municipalities are sort of the fingertips of the state. And if they serve their constituents well, usually their parties also get the vote in the national elections. And the mayors of two major cities, Mr. Mansur Yavaş of Ankara and Mr. Ekrem İmamoğlu of Istanbul, are extremely possible despite filibusters and vetoes by AKP MHP controlled city assemblies and the president's office. The second person, and she is truly the rising star of the opposition, is this lady, Meral Akşener, the Iron Lady. She leads EYP, which simply means good party. You know, when you are good, you don't need to invent names. She's extremely intelligent. She has tremendous experience in Turkish politics going back to 1990s. And she has the potential to reunite Turkey's fragmented center-right vote, which traditionally held the majority in the parliament. Of course, there are others. I don't want to miss them. Let me just go back here. Here is the entire opposition from left to right. I have already introduced Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu, Ms. Meral Akşener of EYP. This bearded grandfatherly gentleman is Mr. Karamollaoğlu. He leads the small Islamist party Saadet, or Felicity. This gentleman is the leader of the center-right Tiny Democratic Party. You may remember the fifth from the left face, Mr. Ali Babajan, former lieutenant of AKP and probably, arguably, the best economy czar Turkey had until he resigned from the party. His party is called Deva Party. And finally, Mr. Ahmet Davutoğlu, also an erstwhile ally of Mr. Erdogan, who was banished from the party, and these two gentlemen have formed their own parties. Mr. Ali Babajan is center-right but liberal. Mr. Ahmet Davutoğlu is center-right but more conservative. Let's look at this picture because it explains the genius of Kılıçdaroğlu and why AKP is likely to lose. This is a coalition that offers opponents of AKP or currently marginally attached constituencies of AKP a wide array of political choices. You got center left, you got center right, you got former AKP leaders who have proven their capacity and performance while in the administration. You got another Islamist party, Saadet, who's also extremely pro human rights. So, Mr. Erdogan really has a battle in his hands. But let's face it, I mean, Mr. Erdogan will win if he manages to bring back prosperity. According to IMF data, in the last 7 years, ending at the second quarter of 2021, Turkey's real per capita GDP declined continuously. And at some point, Mr. Erdogan lost his rainmaker reputation. He is no longer the man who brings bread to the table. He's a man who takes the bread away from the table. And I don't think there is really any possibility for him to regain his popularity. Let me show you something. This is in Turkish, but if you uh, tap, if you write metropole as spelled in English, you will see also the English version of this. This is from the September or October survey conducted this year. And on top is the yellowish line where 28.7%, roughly a third of Turkish population says, I don't have enough income to cover my basic needs. Wow. So, according to this poll, and there are other polls which pretty much come up with the same results, one third of Turks are in poverty. Roughly a half of the nation, 49.2%, can only cover its very basic needs and nothing else. And only 21.7% feel good. They feel economically secure. Remember, this 21% is a far cry from the combined votes of AKP and MHP, which is roughly at 40%. So, never mind the entire nation, Mr. Erdogan failed in his basic duty of even feeding his own constituents. Can it get better? I've made so many graphics, you will have to. Can it get better? No, it's going to get worse. This is another representative poll by Yöneylem, which is a new but reliable polling agency. And the question on top is, how do you think the economic conditions will evolve over the next 12 months? And 58% say it's going to get worse. I don't think any Democratic leader can win re-election with this kind of polls behind him. And there is even something which shows, yeah, no, that's enough, that's enough. Now, one area where the opposition was failing was distrust in its ability to steer the country out of its economic and political problems. This is why this table in Turkish is extremely important. It's by metropole again. And the question is, do you think the opposition alliance can cure Turkey's economic disease if and when they come to power. The yes votes at 45.7% are only marginally above those who think the opposition will not make a difference. But if you a few months ago, if the same question was asked and only 42% believed the opposition would make a difference. So month by month, the nation's confidence increases that the opposition is capable of solving Turkey's problems. This is very important, and this is one of the secrets behind Mr. Kemal Kilicdaroglu's leadership and the rise of the Turkish opposition. It has a laser sharp focus on economic problems. Mr. Erdogan, either because he has become very volatile or on purpose, tries to distract the nation's attention from the economic stress. You may have heard that he threatened to kick out 10 ambassadors from allied nations. You may have heard that he has troubles with the United States concerning Turkey's possession of Russian made S 400 anti missile system. You may have heard he threatens another military campaign in Syria. All of these, from the perspective of the presidency and AKP, there are reasons for Erdogan advocating these policies. But at the end, all politics are domestic and local, and Mr. Erdogan hopes that by appealing to jingoism, to patriotism, or to the anti Western sentiment in Turkey, to recapture the hearts of the voters. That's not going to happen. I have at least 10 polls conducted over the last 3 months which tell me that at least 60, in some polls 75% of Turks only care about unemployment and the cost of living, and they shall not vote for Erdogan or AKP unless Mr. Erdogan manages to improve the conditions. But he can't because he really has bizarre economic theories. I mean, once again, you may have heard that our central bank cut its main policy rate by 200 basis points to 16% per annum. But headline inflation is 20%. And unlike the Fed, Turkish central bank cannot make the claim that, oh, yeah, that's a supply shock. It's related to the pandemic. Uh, Supply chains are broken, but don't worry, this inflationary shock is temporary. Next week, things will go back to normal. Normal for Turkey is 16%. It hasn't been any lower over the last 3 years. But so why is the central bank cutting rates, which increases dollarization and currency weakness? Simply because Mr. Erdogan thinks that higher interest rates beget higher inflation. That's exactly the opposite of traditional and orthodox monetary policy. So I can give you many examples. For instance, he thinks that food inflation is caused by the collusion of supermarket chains. You know, we have like over 5,000 retail chains in Turkey. How are they going to collude? He's unlikely to find a cure for Turkish economic stress. And remember, the average forecast for Turkey's GDP growth this year is roughly 7%. In 2022 and 2023, the averages dropped to 3 and 4% respectively. If you can't increase your voter support when the economy is growing full steam, how are you going to do it, Mr. Erdogan, when the economy enters a secular slowdown? He can't. And from now on, I plan to shoot a lot more videos about the opposition and its proposed policies, its platform, as it is called, whether it will be able to improve Turkey's human rights record. Uh, there are a lot of Western observers and a fairly strong minority among Turkish experts who claim if Mr. Erdogan senses he's going to lose the next elections, he's simply going to cheat. He's either going to postpone the elections, cancel them maybe, or even use the army and the police to steal the election and essentially uh, to graduate from being an autocrat to a despot or to a tyrant. These fears are exaggerated. Turkey has always been democratic at the very bottom, in the sense that people only respect leaders who are elected by the polls. And Turks sincerely care that it's a fair and equitable election. Some people claim that Mr. Erdogan will use the army and the police to control the streets and to rule Turkey, despite the fact he's, undermining economic prosperity and development. I shall shoot videos about those two, but there is really no reason for any Turkish institution, be it the judiciary, be it the central bank, be it the army, support an aging and ailing political leader who no longer has the trust of a majority of the nation. These institutions, if they are called to help, they will probably claim the orders are unconstitutional and remain on the sidelines and only intervene to reestablish rule of law, but they shall not allow Erdogan to steal the next election. Of course, to be fair, I've always been wrong about Mr. Erdogan. He has survived many scares like this, and I may be wrong again. But this time I feel more confident in my predictions simply because he is aging very rapidly. I mean, some people claim that he may not be able to run again for the presidency on account of his declining health. I wish him health, by the way, and good health, and may he live for 10,000 years. This is not you get rid of your opponent by hoping that he passes away. Okay, this has been pretty lengthy, but I haven't shot a video for about 2 weeks simply because events were moving too fast in Turkey. And next, in my next video, I'll be talking about Turkish economics and how bad, how dark and cold Turkish winter is going to be. I am extremely grateful for your comments and for your support. If you like these videos, if you think Real Turkey channel stands for truth in Turkish politics and economy, please send the link to friends or business associates who may enjoy it. Once again, this is Atilla Yeşilada saying goodbye from Istanbul.